Hello, babes. Welcome to Exploring Our Depths, the podcast dedicated to the mental and spiritual health and hygiene of the kink inclined. I am Daddy Doyen, also known as the Demonatrix. I am a professional dom, fine dom, burlesque artist, the founder of the Kinky Cafe LLC, and your host for Exploring Our Depths. If you do not know me, get to know me. Follow all of our links. You can find us on Instagram at Kinky Cafe LLC. That is Kinky Cafe with a K LLC on Instagram, on YouTube, right here. So, babes, this is going to be our second episode where I go without my ADHD aid, which would be my little script that I write before each episode, because it kind of helps me stay on track. Instead, for the sake of better authenticity and because I want to share, for the sake of me showing more of my authentic self, I am going off the cuff with kind of an outline, going because I still have ADHD. I still need things to keep me on track and keep my thoughts in order, because I will go off on a tangent. Okay, I will go off on a rant any day, anytime. Just allow me to do it and I'll go. Okay. So in today's episode, we are talking BDSM and polyamory. Our topics are jealousy, racial dynamics, and stigma. So first of all, excuse my absence. I have been traveling a little bit. I went to New York and I did a collaboration with these other performer slash producers. Shout out to Daddy Dolan and Ann Arkey of New York City. They are great performers, great queer performers and producers. They do a monthly show called Heartbreaker at Pink Metal in Bushwick, in Brooklyn, New York. If you're in that area, I suggest you check them out. Especially if you're into rock and roll, if you're into metal, and you like queer shit, which I know I like queer shit and metal, so why not? And I also got to check out Folsom East for the first time. I've never been to a Folsom event. I would after being at Folsom East, I would really like to experience the one in San Fran. If I have the chance, like, if there is some sub out there on the West Coast that would like to bring me over there. I know my way around LA a little bit, you know. I've been to San Fran one time. I would love to explore it some more. So I got to do that, and then I performed in Midsummer Night's Kink Festival with Divine Ray. Okay, first of all, I saw Fag Talk live. That's PHAG, Popular Hot Ass Gossipers. Okay, Talk, TAWLK, Fag Talk, with T.S. Madison. Yes, I met T.S. Madison in person. Okay, she hugged me. She smelled fantastic. She feels fantastic. Like, she radiates this, like, I don't know, like, and she called out my little sprinkle, my little magic. She could feel it off me, and I was just very proud of that moment. And she gave me some inspiring words that just like made me feel like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. Things things might seem a little difficult at times, but I can do this. I can do this. So I was very happy about that. Went to see that live. I got a few gifts as well. We got some body butter from what's their from what is the name of this business? Why can't I remember? It's okay. If you watch Maddie in the Morning, if you watch Fag Talk, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They're the body butters that she's always talking about, with that business there. And then we got a little sample of her perfume called Everything. And that smells delicious as well. That was great. And then I performed at Midsummer Night's Kink Festival with Divine Ray, and the House of Ray, and they did a collaboration with Atlanta Subby School and a few other local businesses and things like that, and it was really great. We weren't really allowed to take pictures and video too much, because it was on like a nudist campground, and we're not really allowed to photograph and videotape too much. So, that was a little bit of a thing, but but we made it work. We still had fun. I didn't get to record my performance, but that's okay. I have performed that particular performance before, and it was still great. So during my travels, I've been thinking a lot on the subject of polyamory in BDSM, because so often the two things intersect. There's often some form of ethical non-monogamy involved in BDSM relationships. And it's not always the case, but it is often the case. And in these situations, I think that people can often misconstrue the boundaries of these relationships because of the subject matter, so to speak, of that type of relationship. You're already working against a stigma of BDSM kink being this taboo thing, and it's whips and chains and pain, and we must always be degrading somebody or doing something real rough. And first of all, that's just not the case all the time. But the first topic that really resounded in my mind was about jealousy, and what makes a jealous person as opposed to jealousy that's just a human reaction. I remember, especially in some of my past relationships, I've been accused of either thinking that I'm all high and mighty because I don't experience jealousy, or thinking that I'm more evolved or than somebody else, or I've had exes claim that I just don't that I don't experience jealousy at all, that I just don't feel it. And so I even found them at times sort of going out of their way to try to like spark some feeling of jealousy in me. And I think that even now I've noticed that people seem to have this idea that maybe I don't experience jealousy like other people do, because I am, number one, I'm a professional sex worker. Um, Number two, I am polyamorous, and I'm a dominant, you know. So I find a lot of times people will come up to me and they'll say, "Oh, well, I can't ever do that. I don't think I can do the polyamory thing. I'm too jealous for that. I'm too much of a jealous person for that." And I sit there and I think to myself, well, what makes you think that I'm not a jealous person, or that I don't experience that feeling of jealousy with my partners? Is it because I can manage to have more than one partner? That doesn't mean anything. Jealousy is a human experience. It's a human emotion. And it would be it would be too much. It's honestly too much to put on someone else's plate, to expect them to not ever experience a feeling of jealousy, because it is a human emotion. What matters is how you confront it, how you resolve and work through that jealousy. People who are polyamorous, people who are successful in polyamory, do not necessarily lack that ability to feel jealousy. The difference is whether or not you can actually confront that feeling, not just with your partner, or confront your partner specifically, but can you confront yourself? Can you ask yourself, well, what is it about this situation that is bringing up this feeling? Because with me, I don't necessarily, not to sound full of myself or anything like that, but if it's one thing that my parents instilled in me, it's a sense of knowing who I am and how attractive I am. I don't necessarily I don't necessarily harbor feelings of jealousy when it comes to thinking that, oh, my partner's going to leave me for this person because they're more attractive than me, or whatever the case may be. What I worry about is, can somebody else provide something for my partner that I may not be able to on an emotional level? I am way more threatened by that. I am way more threatened by that. Um, for instance, my partner is also my baby girl. We're in a DS dynamic and also a vanilla relationship. And I have never I have never had a feeling of like, oh, I'm threatened by this person, when it comes to, oh, this person is really attractive. Like, I'm sitting here like, bitch, I'm hot too. Like, and like, I'm not threatened. I'm also a Sagittarius. Like, let's just, we're like that. But no, be serious. Okay, I'm being serious. But it's not necessarily about the um about how attractive another person is. It's more like, what if my baby girl wants this person? What if this other person asks my baby girl, like, if they want another daddy? Like, what if this person tries to dominate my baby girl? What if this person tries to take my place? The protection part, the part where I take care of her. What if somebody tries to swoop in and do that for her in my stead? That's where the jealousy comes to mind in my case. um, and I know that the way that we can work through that, before saying, oh, I'm too much of a jealous person for that, what if, and I'm not trying to push anything on anyone, like, if you like monogamy, that's your that's your prerogative. I would never try to force any type of lifestyle on someone that they are not comfortable with or that they don't want to try. I am just saying that for the people who would like to try this type of open dating, or polyamorous relationship structure, ethical non monogamy, for people who want to try to love that way, don't allow these thoughts that, oh, you're such a jealous person that you're not going to be able to move through it. Don't let that stop you, because if you are willing to put in the work to learn how to communicate, even when it comes to rough feelings, things like getting your head around jealousy, if you can learn to communicate through those feelings without allowing your emotions to control the way that you approach these subjects, you will be fine. You will be perfectly fine. Jealousy is a normal emotion to feel. So don't beat yourself up about it either. What it takes is empathy for yourself, empathy for your partner who you may be experiencing this jealousy over, because they want to go date someone else or whatever the case may be. Don't avoid the situation. Avoiding situations, avoiding confrontation a lot of times can get us into deeper trouble than if we were to just bring up subjects in the first place. And I know that's easier said than done. However, I promise you that if you put in the work and time to push through that first barrier, it becomes easier and easier as it goes along. It could be as simple as saying, if your partner brings up, I think I would really like to try dating somebody else outside of our circle, outside of our relationship, um, you know, um, and I don't want you to feel bad. I don't want you to feel yada yada. It's as simple as starting the conversation like, I hear you, and I think that in order for me to wrap my head around the feelings that you are having, I would like to understand where our relationship stands and how this will affect our relationship moving forward. I would like to know what our communication is going to look like from this point forward. I would like to establish very clear boundaries, and I would like us to work this out so that I am not putting any restrictions on you that are not favorable, and you are not doing the same to me in return. Because just like jealousy can exist in polyamorous relationships, cheating can also exist in polyamorous relationships. If something happens outside of the boundaries of what you have set, aside, or what you have set, the boundaries that you have set for your polyamorous relationship or your ethical non-monogamous relationship, that can be considered cheating because it harmed someone, it brought pain to someone. And what's the difference between jealousy and a jealous person? Well, a jealous person to me is someone who cannot move past their jealousy, cannot move past these feelings to see any resolution when it comes to allowing that feeling to pass or allowing both parties to work through that feeling together. A jealous person is going to just shut everything down, just going to use that veto power to say, nope, you're not going to do this. No, I'm not comfortable with any of this, any of that. This, that. They're not going to give you a chance to breathe or ask questions or second guess anything. And that's not to say that that a person that is like that cannot genuinely care about someone, because I believe that people who are like that, they do genuinely care about the person that they're dealing with. However, we can tell when something is healthy and when something is unhealthy. When someone is going so far as to make up scenarios that haven't happened yet in order to put you in a position where you are to blame for things that haven't happened yet, that's when I need you to recognize that that's a red flag, and it may be time to either question your relationship or maybe it's time to go. Because I've seen that sometimes where I've seen it and I've experienced it myself. I've done it myself, where I've been in a relationship where I'm sitting here like, oh, my partner just really, really loves me. She just really loves me so much that she doesn't want anything to come in between our relationship or anything like that, like not even my work, none of that. But then it's like, then you get to those points, that time when they're off out of town working or something. I'm saying or something like it's not a real situation. Or something, hint, hint, and they're making up scenarios in their head about how you might have some people over or whatever, because in the past their exes have cheated on them when they were when they were out of town before. So now you've got the burden of being thought of in that line of thinking. Now you're doing things that you're not because of something that somebody else did in the past. And that's a jealous person. That's an unhealed person. And I hate to say unhealed like that, because I feel like when I say unhealed, I feel like people hear that I'm saying that like somebody needs to be totally healed for you to think that they're worth anything as a human being. And that's just not what I'm saying at all. Like it's nowhere near that extreme. I don't believe that we ever stop healing. I don't believe that there is ever a point, unless we turn into literal angel dust one day. I don't think that there is ever going to be a point where a human being is so healed that they're perfect, that they're great, that they're literal deities and angel dust and I don't know, God nectar. You know, that's just not what I'm talking about. An unhealed person, when I say an unhealed person, what I mean is someone who isn't even making the effort to pursue healing. That person, and we all know this person, we all know at least one person, we all know at least one person who spends like every day of their lives complaining about what is wrong, what's terrible, what's awful about life, and they're just not doing anything. They're just not doing anything to change it. They're just not doing anything to change the trajectory of their life, to do anything to heal their body, to do anything to heal their mind. They refuse to break patterns. They refuse to look at what they have to do with the situation that they're in, and it just continues to pile and pile and pile, and they're just not doing anything about it. They're just not doing anything about it, but all they can do is complain. And that's not the type of person, when especially when you are trying to do your own healing, especially when you are trying to find a relationship or a love that will lift you up and take you to a place where you are feeling fulfilled and whole and fully loved. That's not the type of person that you can be with and expect to get anywhere. And I hate to break it to you that way, but it's just the truth. And I'm a Sagittarius. I'm going to tell you the truth, whether it hurts or not. Sorry. Yes, so long story short, communication and empathy are key. Now let's talk about racial dynamics, especially in BDSM and relationships, but BDSM and polyamorous relationships on top of it. That's a whole other layer of things. And then when you involve kink in interracial relationships and BDSM, again, it's a whole other layer of stigma, taboo, everything. As many of you know, as you've probably deduced, I am polyamorous. Right now, as it stands, I have one partner. I am in an interracial relationship, and my singular partner right now is also my baby girl, the LG to my DD. And she's my princess. She's my baby girl. And whereas I see her as my sweet, cute baby who, is obviously a full grown adult, who has a mind of her own, a mind that I really enjoy. She is ADHD. She's autistic, ADHD. She can be kind of off the wall sometimes. It's giving very much. It's giving very much black cat, golden retriever energy. Like, we are the epitome of black cat, golden retriever dynamics, on top of our duality and our sort of opposites attract dynamic. Our lives are so vastly different too. Our backgrounds are so vastly different too. I'm from the West Indies. I'm obviously the black one. um, um, and I grew up with some very, very different family values than she did. Um, she came from a kind of conservative, um, Republican background. Although, like, her mother is more of a liberal. Her father is not. um, he's very red hat is all I'll say. Um, and so we've already had some very interesting situations to deal with when it comes to race and our relationship. When we first started dating, she asked me to go hang out with her friends. And I think that her friends, and her too at the time, they couldn't understand why I, as a black person, the only black person, wouldn't want to go frolic in the cornfields in the middle of the night during Halloween with a bunch of white people from the countryside who all are come from very Republican backgrounds. Why would I not want to go run around in a cornfield at night with them? Couldn't think of any reasons why. But anyway, apparently that has, ruffled some feathers. The thing is that I treat them the way that I treat anyone that's like them. I treat them with distance. I treat them with an arm's length mentality, that you don't get any closer to me until you prove to me that you're not going to harm me in some way. And it has proven itself to protect me many times before. And the few times that I haven't used this method to protect myself, it has come to bite me in the ass in a really significant way. And I think that in these BDSM relationships, in vanilla relationships, it's already enough that, especially when one partner is white and one partner is black, there are already so many cultural differences that each party needs to get used to. And then on top of it, it's like, if the white part of the family cannot wrap their heads around or open their minds up to recognizing where that black family is coming from and why they do certain things and why they will not accept being treated a certain way, it just doesn't work, because then the non-melanated part of the family is unknowingly and unwittingly, a lot of the times, or some of the time, unwittingly bringing harm to that black part of the family. Now introduce BDSM to this mix, and suddenly now you have power dynamics involved in it too. And then it's like, wow, there's so much to unpack there. For one, think about DS dynamics where the black partner is the submissive and the white partner is the dominant. obviously that brings up a lot of it brings up a lot of inherited trauma, especially with other Black people, and not necessarily the Black person that is in that dynamic, because they're obviously, or maybe not obviously, but most of the time, if they're going to put themselves in that situation, it is because they consented to putting themselves in that situation. So they probably have different feelings about it than people who are on the outside observing. Um, so just like just like we're not going to, us as Black people, we don't have the authority to tell somebody else what their relationship should look like, just because our trauma is triggered by that situation, right? Now, what about the other way around? People don't seem to, I feel like we don't talk about this topic as much, because especially with the rise in interest in interracial porn and things like that. um I believe that um a lot of this interracial, like race focused porn has desensitized a lot of us to the dynamics played out in families, in the environment of the people that are doing the thing, that are in the relationship, that are having the intimate time, you know. um it's just, it seems to be, and whether they admit it or not, it seems that it can be just as hard for non-melanated folks, Europeans, the Caucasoids, to um, accept that a white person or a white girl would submit to a Black person as well. And I guess I don't really think of that way. But then I've also had people try to say that, like, the reason that my white partner is my submissive is because of her race. And that's just not true. That's just, she's my submissive because that's just what she's like, and what she prefers, and I am, and my natural instinct is to be more dominant, more assertive, more of the nurturer, the person who protects. I think that we don't often talk about these racial dynamics in BDSM because it is a taboo topic. And BDSM and kink, when you start talking about it and you start talking about the community, to begin with, it's a taboo topic. People already start to look at you like, I don't know about the whips and chains shit. I don't know about, and a lot of times, ain't that some white people shit? It's not white people shit. It's not only white people shit. It can be our shit too. It is our shit too. Um, we just have to navigate it a little bit with a little bit more caution than most white people do. But it's also up to these same white people to educate themselves on where our boundaries lie. What are what is the impact of you playing with us in this scene? What is the impact that you have with your actions in this community when you are playing with me? And do you realize that there is some inherited trauma that you can provoke in doing this? One of the things that I really enjoyed, and I'm really terrible for this, I really need to get her information, but there was one practitioner, a rope top, who was teaching at the Midsummer Nights Kink Festival, and I believe their pronouns were she, they. They went through their process before working with someone, their negotiation process, and what they say. And one of the first things they brought up was that, or one of the first things she brought up was I I recognize that I am a white woman and that I am capable of doing harm. It was just that tiny, 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 tiny detail. That tiny, tiny, tiny detail is so dynamic when it comes to interracial relationships and interaction within the scene, within the community. Just that acknowledgement that you are capable of doing harm just because you are a white body playing with a black body is so dynamic, so earth-shattering, and it's the simplest thing. A couple months ago, there was this whole thing with some other their content creators who, I don't want to call them out specifically, so I'm just not going to. But they're a popular polyamory content creation pair. They're a couple, and they talk about polyamory and decolonizing. And one day, the woman that is part of this couple brought up the topic of BDSM and went on not one, but two separate, completely ignorant rants about BDSM and how it was created by the Marquis de Sade, which it was not, by the way. She went off about it and how BDSM cannot be decolonized because it is a colonizer practice in itself, and it's rooted in practices of slavery and ownership, etc., etc. And the thing is, I was willing to lean into that argument a little bit because I could see where she was coming from. You know what I mean? BDSM, practices of BDSM are actually not things that were directly related to the practice of slavery. They were practices in sexuality that came about and were researched by different philosophers and have shown up in different writings and things like that, before, after, during, etc., the times of slavery. So I'm not going to say that it's not reminiscent of it, because it very much is. And there is a lot in the practice of BDSM and in fetishism and kink that can bring up a lot of inherited traumas and race based trauma, in Black people, especially. That's not something to be ignored. But in acknowledging that this is something that can happen, that you can cause harm in that way, and being able to communicate clearly. Again, we're coming back to this subject of communication, clear communication. That's what it takes to work through any of this, any of these subjects, and to make our community seem a little less threatening, a little less taboo. And basically, in the end, you, as either part of a BDSM dynamic and or relationship, you have to decide what you will and will not accept. If you are willing to be submissive to a white person, that's up to you. If you trust that white person not to cross your boundaries, that is up to you. However, if you are in a relationship and you do not consent to having other people, so like I said, at the end of the day, what matters is what you consent to and what you do not consent to. And that includes in an interracial situation, dynamic relationship, and the boundaries that you place around you and your partner, what other partners have say in your relationship, and what friends and family and anyone else around you can, has consent to interfere with or be involved with when it comes to your relationship and your dynamic. It depends on what you consent to, what you will and will not accept. Like I said before, there's already so much taboo around the subject of the kink community. We're already fighting stigma left and right, especially since 50 Shades of Grey came out. It's like some people now have a very unhealthy idea of what kink and BDSM should be. And others just think that we're weird again. I actually, it's funny that I actually bring up 50 Shades of Grey, because I'm going to admit something, and don't look at me sideways about it, but like, I had never actually seen the entire movie 50 Shades of Grey before. I was able to make judgments based on what I had been told from the kink community. I had been told it's a waste of time, don't go see it, etc., etc. It makes us look real bad. I'm always going to actually give the research a chance. I'm always going to actually do my own opinion making. You know what I mean? Like, I guess I'll trust people who I trust to have my same taste or my same standards or something close to my standards. But I'm always going to, at the end of the day, I need to be the one making decisions for myself. So I'm always going to test it out. So I see that Netflix added 50 Shades of Grey. And it's recommended to me, of course, because I like BDSM related things. So I finally watched it. And I'm looking at this like, wow, like first of all, I can see where the Twilight fan fiction comes in. Um, it's the way that Christian Grey is constantly even the title 50 Shades of Grey comes from him saying, because I'm 50 shades of fucked up. Oh, brood. You know, like it was so cheesy. I couldn't take it seriously. Like, I'm sorry. He said 50 shades of fucked up. So many of us have experienced dom drop before. We've experienced top drop, okay? But it's not like that, okay? And first of all, Christian Grey was a stalker and with no sense of boundaries, a creep who took advantage of somebody who he already had a precarious power dynamic with, to begin with. And it doesn't make our community look any better. It's like, on one hand, BDSM becoming more and more part of the mainstream can work to our advantage, and it can help us to show how BDSM, when practiced responsibly, can do so much for your exploration of self, your learning how to establish boundaries, and stick with them, learning how to speak up for yourself, learning what consent means and what culture looks like. BDSM, when practiced responsibly, can be such a healing and growing factor in your life. But that's only if you make the choice to practice it responsibly, to grow from it, to benefit from it, and not just use it as a means to your own pleasure and that's it. Because once we start pursuing only our pleasure, things can get out of hand. Lines can become blurry, if you get what I'm saying. And that's not what we want to give off in our community, especially. So it might be a good thing for BDSM to become a little bit more mainstream, because on one hand, people can learn, and people can learn to practice kink responsibly and to practice BDSM responsibly, because the difference between kink and BDSM is power exchange, right? And with power exchange comes responsibility. You have a responsibility to the person that you are playing with, and a responsibility to yourself to be able to hold strong in your own boundaries, to not cross someone else's, to not harm someone physically, emotionally, or mentally, permanently. And while this can be true, it can be used for good, kink in the mainstream can also be very harmful to our community. it makes us seem more dangerous at times. For instance, tell me why American Horror Story, what was it, 2 seasons ago or something like that? Maybe it was 1 season ago. One of the most recent seasons of American Horror Story, the murderer was another, because this is not the first time that they've used I don't know what's going on with my my voice here. This is not the first time that they have wandered into fetishism and BDSM and used the BDSM dominant character as like a murderous rapey like character. You know what I mean? They created a monster out of a BDSM practitioner again, but this time it was supposed to be in, and I'm sorry, but spoiler alert. Basically, this leather daddy murderer was the personification of the AIDS epidemic. And like, okay, cool, I get that, but like, did it have to be a leather daddy? Did it have to like cross over into this community being violent and murderous again? You know what I mean? um there That's not the only example, and right now, I'm I'm trying to think of more beyond 50 shades of gray, and that um the first season of that show on Netflix, Bondage, when this girl just goes off and she's just doing whatever because she can, because she's just a dom now, and she's going out here on the streets with no training. She doesn't want to get training. She doesn't want to listen to anybody who has more experience than her. So she's just going to go out and harm her friend, harm everybody around her, have no sense of boundaries, consent, or any of it. Okay. 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 What about aftercare? Any of that? You know anything about that? No, she didn't. So the first season was very harmful, and a bunch of people from the community wrote to Netflix about how harmful it was. And so they changed it. But we're already fighting these stigmas. And then you go out into we go out into the world, and we expect to be able to be uh consumed, for lack of a better word, as as human beings, as people who, while we are deities on this earth, some people don't see that and can't accept that and don't want to, and they think of people who think of themselves in that way as people who are full of themselves or narcissistic or whatever the case may be, when it's literally just a different way of thinking of the source energy that you emote. Um, but we go out as D types, we go out into the world, and especially in vanilla spaces, in any space that we're in, and we expect to be consumed as human beings who have room for mistakes, who can sometimes harm people, but we can also be accountable for our actions. We expect to be seen as people who can make changes, and who can learn, and who can grow, and who can change. But it's like, we go out there and we're faced with people who expect us to always uphold a certain standard no matter what. And if you stray even just a little bit from what they think you're supposed to be as a dominant, as somebody is dominant, as a dominant in general, then all of a sudden you can be villainized. You can be villainized about anything, really. I've personally been told by an ex-partner that they think that I just want to be dominant in all aspects of my relationship all the time. And it's because I just want to dominate everybody that I don't want to accept living a certain way or something like that. I can't remember the actual argument, but it was something silly. And it was just like, it was so interesting to me, thinking to myself, like, that's crazy. Like, why would I? So I want to dominate everyone, but yet I'm in a relationship with somebody who is not kinky necessarily, who is vanilla. Um, and I accept her and let her lead me in things. Like, I wasn't asking to dominate her because I knew that she didn't want that. And at the end of the day, it's kind of hurtful when your partner doesn't when your partner expects you to, or is portraying you as a certain way, when they're the one in a relationship with you, and you would think that they know better or otherwise. But this is the picture that they're forcing on you anyway, the projection that they're forcing on you, whether they know you intimately or not. And even though they spend 99% of their time with you throughout the day, they're still forcing this projection on you that other people at random do in other parts of your life. People who aren't intimate with you, people who don't know you at all. Um, and that's one thing that I have really noticed, being in the professional dominant industry, I guess, in professional BDSM. A lot of people thinking that because my role is as a D type, that I'm always looking to control the situation, that I'm always looking to dominate everything. And while I can admit that I'm I'm not a domineering person. I am, however, a person who can take charge of the situation if need be. I'm not the type of person that is going to force my uh leadership onto anything. Um, but if others don't want to take on that responsibility, I am usually the person that will step up for that type of leadership role. And that's just the way I am. I am assertive. I am not aggressive. I mean, unless you want me to be, you know. But I in no way want to dominate all situations, because for one, that's a lot of responsibility. Nobody wants to dominate everything. That's That is so much responsibility. And do we not realize that that's what's happening in this world right now? Like in this country right now? So many people want to dominate the same thing, and it's creating problems. It's creating discord. It's a problem. Um, and I think that it's difficult as D types to always have to fight against that sort of stigma, and it's over being the type of person that you are. Because don't get me wrong, like, there, you can teach yourself to be dominant if you want to be dominant. You can teach yourself to be submissive if you want to be submissive. But we do naturally lean one way or the other, or we feel like we can easily slip from one side to the other, D, S, or switch. And I think that it can be so difficult to work against this taboo of people thinking that because you are a D type, oh, now that means that you must dominate every aspect of the life around you and everything that's happening around you. And that just leaves you open to being villainized left and right, left and right. Then when you're in that situation, tell me, who is there to stand up for D types? To even, how can a D type even argue their own case without looking suspicious? I think that we could all strive to educate not only the masses, not only the vanilla crowd and the people out there that are already learning from these attempts by vanilla people to make kink and fetish media, but I think that we need to continue to educate ourselves, because whether it's jealousy, racial dynamics, or stigma, how we work through any of it is communication, is our communication skills. How can we have open discussion about sexuality, about exploring sexuality, and where it intersects with our mental and spiritual hygiene, our mental and spiritual health? How can we have open discussion of what a healthy BDSM dynamic looks like, and what red flags should actually be looked at as, or what actions or things should you actually look at that may be red flags, in case you do want to save, you do feel like you need to save your friend or something like that, without bringing more harm to a community you know nothing about. You'll be more educated to address a situation like that. Or if you are the person within a BDSM dynamic, you now know how to communicate what you need and what will bring the least harm to yourself and to your partner and to future partners, because we're talking about BDSM and polyamory here. And especially when we're thinking of expanding our circles, our intimate circles, to other people, communication is so integral. It's so key to healthy dynamics, to healthy relationships. And when I say communication, I think that I need to point out the fact that communication doesn't just mean speaking. It doesn't just mean being able to speak your mind and say what's on your heart, and and speaking to respond. It Communication is the act of speaking to be heard and listening to understand, not just listening to respond. And that's a lesson that even I had to learn. The point is not to listen just to respond, it is to listen to understand and be able to respond from a place of not only logic but of empathy for your partner, for yourself, because jealousy happens, because harm happens, shit happens, especially in BDSM. We can harm each other unwittingly, unknowingly, and sometimes we may not recognize that we've done harm. If we work on our own growth and healing and our ability to not only speak but to listen to understand, we would be much better off as a people. So, as usual, I hope that you have been drinking your water, staying hydrated. I hope that you have been getting as much sleep as you possibly can, even with everything going on in this world right now. I know that there is so much happening and it's such a burden, and I just hope that, if nothing else, that this podcast can bring you a little bit of joy and a little bit of reprieve from things that might be weighing on you and weighing on the world. Hey babes, just stopping in to add a little something to the end of this episode. I am announcing the official end of this season of Exploring Our Depths. We will return in January with new interviews, new check-ins, new meditations, and more. Really looking forward to that. We're going to have a much more cleaned up process. It's going to give me some time to relax and really work on things. And in the meantime, there will be a few meditations sprinkled here or there while we're in our off time. So don't worry about that. I've still got you covered. You can still find me on TikTok. If you need to reach me at all, if you still would like to keep up with me and get a little bit of the spiritual guidance, or you just need to vent or anything like that, do me a favor, join Kinky Cafe Society through our Patreon. That's patreon.com/Kinky Cafe with a K Society. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe to us on all of our platforms. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on our YouTube for notifications when there are new videos dropping. Make sure to stay hydrated, get your meals in, get your sleep, and remember that you are not broken, just a little bent. And I will see you in January.